All right. I'm going to wait a few minutes, let people filter in. So probably we'll get fully started around about 5 minutes. So let me know if you can't hear me or see. You shouldn't be able to see me, but let me know if you can hear me. Just add a comment if you can hear me. See, I have someone watching right now, so let me know if you can hear me. Awesome. Thanks. So, saying earlier, probably start diving in about 5 minutes just to let people filter in. And so, what I'll do first is I'll just kind of give an overview of what we're going to do and how this kind of webinar will go. It's going to be pretty casual. So, throw in questions whenever you want. I've got all the comments coming in. Things look good. It's my first ever live stream, so I basically don't know what I'm doing. So just bear with me if there are any issues that come up. But the way I think this will go is I'll do an overview of, like, very quick how I read information. That's why you see my Instapaper up. I'll just go through real quick kind of my process. I'll be posting a YouTube video soon about this, and that will go into more detail about how I read, take notes on Instapaper, and use Readwise to filter everything into Roam and what my layout looks like. And that will also have a link to the Readwise template that I use. It's a little customized. It's semi-default, but there are a few customizations that I made just for my overall layouts that I use in Roam. And then after that, we'll go to my public database, or it's not really public, it's my open one though that I give access out to. And so what that will show is kind of the bare bones skeleton of this whole system. We'll go through each page one by one, and that will let us see, it'll show you kind of what these pages look like, because a lot of them are Kanban boards that are populated by queries. And so you can see the queries without it being cluttered by a whole bunch of stuff. And I'll talk a little bit about what I do in each of those pages for this whole system. And then after that, we'll jump over to my private knowledge base. And what that will do is it'll show you, I'll go through all those same steps, and we'll see kind of what the workflow looks like, and how I process everything, and what I do with them. And yeah, and we'll go. What I'll do is I'll grab an article that I've taken some notes on, and we'll go through that whole process of highlights, progressive summarization, creating transient notes, then going into the writing inbox and processing stuff in there. So Abe, to your first few hours of Roam, what I would do is just experiment. I would watch the help videos. There are a lot of videos on YouTube. Join the Slack channel if you haven't already. I'm sure Roam Hacker or anyone else can provide an invite to that. That's pretty much the best place to go and learn. A lot of really great people in there. They're very helpful, very smart, and pretty obsessed with Roam. So that's definitely a good place to start asking questions, and then just tinker around in your Roam and try to figure out what works for you. And then as you kind of get comfortable with it, do some journaling, create some to-dos, schedule some to-dos for the future, and then go and look at maybe go look at some courses from like Nat Eliason or any of the YouTube courses. Shiomi has some good videos. There's a ton that I'm blanking on right now, but if you just search for Roam, there are a lot of great video tutorials and courses out there that are some free and some paid that are very worthwhile. Okay, it's about 11:05, and so I think we can go ahead and get started. So, like I said before, we'll do a very quick overview of how I ingest information. I'm showing I have a link up. You can copy that, and I'll keep that up for this portion. That's the link to the first part of the article series that I did on this. And I'll also be posting a video in the next day or two once I finish editing it to my YouTube channel. So if you're subscribed, you'll get a notification once that goes up. That's explains it more succinctly and shows kind of an example. I go through and process an article and all that. So I use Instapaper to do all of my reading for the most part. This is mostly for articles. So for other things, I'll use Hypothesis or anything else that kind of comes to mind. But Instapaper is really good because of the connection to Readwise. So I'll read something in Instapaper, and I'll just bring up this article, and I'll do highlights, take notes, all that. I'm not going to do that right now because I want to dedicate good time to that, and then I'll archive it in Instapaper so it doesn't show up anymore. That'll get filtered into Readwise. And so this is what my template looks like for, in this case, a book in Readwise. So I have all this metadata here. I use this newsletter attribute. I do a weekly newsletter. If you want to check it out, it's newsletter.kylestratus.com. You can sign up. It's usually weekly. Just interesting links and articles or videos that I find interesting. The status is pretty important because this kind of determines what will happen once this gets pulled into Roam. So by default, I put the waiting tag, a link to things to process, which is the first step in the idea factory. And then I also add reading lists for books only. So you can do, if you see here, you can do some conditional formatting with the Jinja templates. So this templating system is Jinja 2, JINJA2. Common if you use and do any sort of kind of web development in Python. I think Django and Flask both use Jinja or allow you to use Jinja as a templating engine. Then a link. And here I have summary. So Readwise doesn't handle headers yet for the Roam export, so I have to go through and manually fix that once it gets imported. And then I just have some notes on how I summarize, what ideas are, the transient notes and literature notes. And so really quickly, literature notes are just kind of I really like this. These are rough summaries or rough outline notes, except for someone else's ideas. So that's kind of the first step in my kind of note-taking flow. And then more things that aren't so tied, more conceptual or more abstract ideas or concepts will be made in transient notes, and I'll use the literature notes and sometimes the highlights as sources for that using BlockRefs. And we'll see that when I go through and actually process an article a little later. Ideas are just ideas is probably a bad term. I've stuck with it just because I've been using it since I started Roam. Inspirations is maybe a better example, and or a better name. So these are these are just things that inspire me. So these are things that could turn into like a research topic or an actual project, something that I build. So I by day programmer, so most of my projects are software based, but sometimes I'll delve into hardware or anything else. Then the summary part, and you'll see how we work with ideas through this process. And then the summary is just kind of, I have these prompts, what are key ideas? I do an executive summary. Tiago Forte, kind of his progressive summarization system inspired that. And then these key ideas, how can I apply this knowledge, and how do these ideas relate to what I already know? These are just prompts to come up with better summaries. I always kind of struggle with coming up with a good summary, and this kind of helps focus my thinking. And so when you have these templates, having these prompts here are really helpful and kind of underrated, I think. So definitely worth having these. And when I post the video for this, I'll also have a link to my template. There's a gist somewhere. I just don't have it off the top of my head. So that's the Readwise export to Rome, and then an article will come in and basically be ready for processing. And so I'll jump over to the public database that has kind of the skeleton of the system, and we'll look at things to process first. So there isn't a whole lot here. So I have some notes I brought in as an example, but this is just kind of a stopover. So what I do with this is I use the link references. So very simple. There isn't really anything in this page. I make sure one of the most important things is to have a regular practice of processing these. It's really easy to forget to do this. So I have a recurring event on my calendar every evening where I spend about an hour processing these. And so what I'll do is in the morning, I'll go through my reading inboxes, which are usually my RSS reader, which I use in our reader. I've just started using. I have a label in my personal email for any sort of newsletters I subscribe to. That's just like read later, and I'll read through a couple of those. And if those have links, I'll open up those links and then just throw them in Instapaper. And then I'll spend some time in Instapaper actually reading them, highlighting, and processing them that way. So that's processing my reading inbox. I do that early in the morning to kind of start the creative juices before my workday. And then later in the evening, I'll actually go through and process them again and from the things to process inbox. And we'll go through and actually do an example of that after we go through this structure. And so the next stop is the writing inbox. And this is where a lot of the work happens. So this is something that gets processed on its own. That should be a regular practice. And so this kind of gives you an idea of what you want to work on at a glance. And so this pulls from the research topics page. It pulls from all of our transient notes and the ideas page, or really just ideas in general. And so I make use of queries. I'll just do this for now. I like these dark themes, but some of them, the queries don't show up super great. The theme I've been using for a while has been broken by the latest update. You can see the search bar hides the title image, but the query text is kind of easier to see here. You can see these queries aren't super complicated. We look for the weighting tag and the ideas tag for ideas. So anywhere I have an idea, I can just type the idea in a block and then add the weighting and ideas tags or backlinks. And it doesn't matter, Rome treats them the same. And so I will just have them all there. So whenever I'm inspired by something, I can just put it in my daily notes. I can put a quick capture. I can do it pretty much anywhere. But the other neat thing is that blocks inherit from their parents. So when I showed you that ideas section in the Readwise metadata here, when you put something under here, you don't have to add the ideas tag or backlink. You can just add weighting, and it will automatically show up in these query results. Same thing for transient notes. So anything that's in quick capture and has a weighting status, it will show up here. Generally, that's what I do with my transient notes. If you have other things, so if you put ideas in your quick capture, I don't use quick capture a whole lot, so it doesn't really happen too much. You can add a not ideas. If you use quick capture a lot and put ideas in there too with weighting, this would capture that, but you can filter that out too. I just don't use quick capture enough for that to be an issue. So all your transient notes that are in waiting status will show up here. So, and once you process them, you'll change the status. But basically, all my transient notes are just the text and then hashtag waiting, and then maybe some other tags just so that I can help identify clusters. So, like Python would be one, just very generic categories. It's super fluid, which I think is one of the great features and powers of Roam is that this whole thing is really just you can change things on the fly and it's not a big deal. It won't ruin your whole system. And this system is pretty allows for that as well. And then research topics. So this just pulls in. Kanban doesn't show up well in queries. So the actual Kanban board isn't filtered out, but when it's actually when your board's populated or when your page is populated, it shows up a little bit differently. So this same thing, the queries are all very similar. We look for awaiting or in progress because for me, research topics don't usually stop being in progress, even though I do have a done state. I usually keep things in progress until I lose interest and I know I'll be uninterested for a while. But anything that I'm waiting to do or I am in the process of researching and building things out and also have the research tag. So basically what I do with this is on the research page, I have a regular Kanban. It's not filled by queries like on the other pages that I'll show you. But I have a regular Kanban. I put the page links there and everything will show up with this query. And so that's pretty much it. Yeah, ideas are inspirations, transient notes. These are for grooming into Evergreen notes. This query really helps you just find clusters of notes that you can kind of combine into an Evergreen note or two. And then the research topics are just so when you set aside some time to do research, you can have kind of a menu of things to look at. And I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit and what that process looks like. And so the next stop is the ideas page. Super simple here. It's just a standard page with a note here. This is a holding place for ideas or inspirations. These notes, just like in the Readwise template, are very useful just because if you don't visit your page for a while, you might forget kind of your conceptualization of the workflow. So it's a good reminder just to have a little note at the top just to remind you, what to do with these. And if that changes, that's okay. You can update that note just so you have a little note for yourself. My memory is absolutely horrible. I'm probably forgetting things, even though I'm looking at notes in my personal Roam while doing this. I still forget things all the time, which is why Roam's so useful for me. But this is really just kind of a way station and a collection of all these ideas. I don't use the actual page too much, but it's just there. The projects page I really like. This is where some of that automation comes in along with the writing inbox. We have a Kanban board. Oops, let me close that. And so, let me see if I can edit it. It's basically just a Kanban board. Underneath it are the statuses, but each one has its own query. And this is the best part for me. I just really like this because I don't have to go into this page to do anything. I don't have to, with Kanban boards, even I use them a lot at work. I always forget to update statuses and things like that. But if I'm in my notes and I have the status right there, I can update the status while I'm working on the note. So once I finish something, I mark it done in my note anyways. It will automatically move the article or the project or whatever from the in progress status to the done status. And again, this is just the structure so that you can see how to implement it. I'll also post give me 1 second. So here's a link to my Gumroad. I have access to JSON exports and I believe also Markdown exports of all of these pages. It's free. if you use this coupon code. Otherwise, it's like $5 minimum, and you can name your price. And then full access to this database is $10, or if you use this code, $5. I wanted to make sure you guys watching this can access it for free, because it's just part of what I'm trying to offer. So you don't have to sit and take furious notes. You can just use that coupon code and grab the exports and import them into your own graph. But this query is basically that same format you saw in the writing inbox. We check that it's for projects, it's a personal project, and the waiting is, or the status is waiting, or in progress, or done. With this, because queries work on a block level, you have to have that projects tag on the status block. So status is an attribute, and then you use the in progress tag, personal, and projects. And obviously you can remix that however you'd like. And then I also do a separate one for work projects. And so that's not shown on here, but basically you would do another Kanban board and change this personal tag in the queries to work, or whatever you want to call it, or your company. It's probably best to do separate ones for each. If you do a lot of different, if you're like a consultant, you work for different companies, you may want to segregate those. But really the key here is that you use queries to populate your Kanban columns rather than manually doing it. So that way it's automated. You can just come back here for a status report. You don't have to do any real updates. And if you don't want to update it, I just want to jump back here. The only downside to queries is that you can't order them natively. So if you want to use ordering to prioritize things and have that at a glance, you'll have to do that manually and not use the queries. I do that separately in my weekly plan, and so it's less of an issue for me to have prioritization on these pages. And so this is the research page. This is a basic Kanban. So again, a bunch of notes to myself here. A note on statuses, why there are statuses. For me, research is always ongoing. And this is my research process. What I do is I create a topic page, and it can be as broad or as narrow as I want at that time. And then if I want to narrow it down, that's really easy to do. I can make sub pages and link them back to the main hub page. If I want to expand it, I can do that, or I could create a new page and link that one, link the original page back to the broader hub page. That'll become a hub page. So I set aside about an hour twice a week to do just research tasks. So what this is I'll pick a topic via head or topic page that's in waiting or in progress, and I'll either go out and hunt down sources for it, and I'll find a bunch of articles. I'll put them in Instapaper, and I'll usually just either leave them. I like to set aside time to just do source hunting and then source reading a little later. So you could do, if you do twice a week like I do, you could do one day source hunting and then reading another day, or you could split up that hour to a half hour of source hunting, a half hour of reading and processing. It's really whatever you want to do. And so this research, the goal of research for me is to create evergreen notes. So I'll go through my regular process of reading articles, books, whatever, highlighting them, annotating them, creating transient notes that will go into my writing inbox, and that process continues. So one flow that could happen is that I'm reading something, I get an idea, put it in my ideas column. Then I go to my writing inbox when I process it, see that idea, and come up with a research topic from that idea, mark that as processed. So it's not in my writing inbox anymore, but now I have the topic page in my research, in this research page. And then that's a signal to me that when I go do research, that's something that I can pursue. So it's kind of this spiral in a way, or a fractal pattern of I do research. From that reading, I generate ideas and transient notes. And then from those ideas, I create more research topics, and the cycle just kind of continues. And it's a really one of those virtuous cycles, I think. And so I have a list of the important outputs. More my outputs could be more topic pages, and the important notes from sources. These don't always have to be evergreen on the topic pages, at least. The topic pages are kind of a hub for everything. So the evergreens would link back to the topic page, but more like scratchpad kind of notes may go there. They may not. The transient notes, I usually like to add a tag to the relevant topics, again, to help identify clusters. So they'll show up in the linked references anyways. But sometimes I'll just have like generic notes in the research pages as well that I can use as a reference guide, because it really doesn't matter whether, I have a note in my linked references or in the page itself. I'm going to read that and see it when I'm looking at that research page. The other outputs are more articles to read and process. So that's that source hunting process that I was just talking about. And then evergreen notes are like the big output. And then that will enable me to either write articles or just learn something that I can contribute to or come up with more ideas. Evergreen notes kind of are really helpful, especially once you create a good collection of them. And then I have article ideas. So this is another output of the writing inbox of ideas. So when I have an idea and process it, it can be, like I said, a project. It could be a research page. It could be an article idea. It could be all three of those, depending on what the inspiration is. There's a lot that you can really do with it, which is really nice. So this is kind of that same structure. I have a note to self, which I sometimes do in my Kanban boards. That's really helpful. I actually took that. I write for Real Python, and we do the same thing on our Trello board. Like the top level card is always kind of a note with some information about that status, and so I've kind of stolen that idea. Thanks, Rome Hacker. I'm glad that this is helpful so far. I think it'll be more helpful too once I show it in action. But this is, again, a lot of the same structure with the queries. We look for the status attribute. We check that it's in research status, and then also that it's under article ideas. And so eventually we'll look at an article idea page. These are generally, once I process an idea into an article idea, that becomes its own page with my article layout. And so I use all of these. I have a lot of processes in my publishing process, I guess. This is just because for writing, I need a really structured practice, or I will just flail and it'll be messy, and I'll have the writing equivalent of spaghetti code, which I do not like. So I have a research phase. I'll have a waiting phase, then I'll outline. And again, these are just kind of blank queries. In progress, which is while I'm writing, editing. Here's the top level notes, see steps 1 through 3 of publishing. So let's look at that. So this is one of my templates for blog publishing. And so before I actually do the publishing part of an article, I'll run it through Grammarly. I'll do a read through on Google Docs. And so the reason I use Google Docs is that it changes the visual environment. And for whatever reason, and I should understand this better than I do because I used to study attention in neuroscience, and but basically having that different visual environment, you'll pick up on things that you wouldn't necessarily capture when you're reading through on the same environment you've been working in. So I'll copy and paste into Google Docs, or I'll just stay in Grammarly because it looks different enough from my Rome to kind of do a read through and make sure it flows well and there aren't things I'm missing. I'll choose a headline. So part of my process is I'll pick like a bunch of headlines and figure out which one I like. I'll actually do the publishing process, make a note for my newsletter for the site update section. I'll publish to any other. So I mostly publish to my own blog, but I'll also publish to Medium or dev.to, depending on what the topic is. Remind myself to add canonical links so it doesn't screw up my search rankings. Then I'll use social media, remind myself to promote on social media. I get a lot of my engagement through Twitter. It's, I don't know, I'm not a marketer. I'm learning about it, but it's really interesting stuff. And it's really cool to see the results of, doing things like Twitter threads that summarize your article. It gets a lot of eyeballs on what you're doing. And I think it's really helpful to people to have a quick summary. And it's also helpful to you to summarize what you wrote sometime after writing it. Usually I'll publish, maybe I'll go through this process after a week or so after writing the initial drafts. So it's good to help kind of concretize what you write. I write partially for myself. I started a habit of blogging when I first became a software engineer. Yeah, I can post a link to my newsletter here. I'll just add it in the comments. It's newsletter.kylestratus.com. And so that it's a ConvertKit landing page. So it's really easy to manage your preferences and things like that. I share links and site update links I find interesting. My interests are all over the place. So there'll be things from like music to personal knowledge management, programming, phone freaking, just like anything and everything I find interesting. I'll throw in some links there. That's where I communicate site updates. The website also has an RSS feed if you prefer that. So I try to provide as many options for staying up to date as I can. This promotion includes the newsletter, social, this tweet storm summary, because like I said, part of my writing is for myself, and to have something that I can refer to that's a little more polished than just my raw notes, and also help me really think through my processes and what I'm doing, whether it's for coding or a project that I'm working on, and to be able to share that. And so making that tweet storm helps you summarize it very succinctly. And I think it's helpful for people that don't want to read through a really long article either. They can kind of get the major points and hopefully be helped by whatever you write. So yeah, that's that blog publishing process. Promoting is, or publishing is steps 4 to 6, promoting step 7. And this whole publishing template is actually part of my article template. So that gets expanded in there. And so we'll see an example of that soon. Actually, we'll kind of get into that now. So that's the whole, that's what the skeleton looks like. There's this Evergreen notes page, but this just shows what this just kind of collects all my Evergreen notes. So once your collection gets big, it won't be so useful. This again is just my public one. So we can look at what an Evergreen note looks like. I'll jump to Dark Age so we can see it a little bit better. But basically, this idea, more communication friction between teams can help them arrive at an optimal solution. I draw a lot from Andy Matischek's notes. He has one on Evergreen note titles should be like an API. So this kind of has a lot of keywords that I would search for. Even though Roam has pretty powerful full text search, I like to have a pretty obvious title so that when I do a search, I can rapidly pick out the correct thing that I'm looking for. And then the actual note is usually paragraph. Usually I have more linking here. There just wasn't a lot of like obvious concepts to link to in this one. Tags are the kind of genres or kind of larger scale concepts that don't fit into an Evergreen note that or categories that this note would belong to. So management, leadership, network science. And then references are all block references to either my direct highlights from the article or literature notes. And so you can see this one's actually a transient note because of the processed tag that it has. And then you can see the source article and things like that. So this is just a random one in my public database. There's a little bit more. There's some other examples that are more fully fleshed out. So that's what we'll look at next. All right. This is blinding. Sorry about that. Jump back to, let's use Dark Age for now. All right. So now that we're in my private knowledge base, what we're going to do is we're going to process an article, and we're going to go through kind of the whole process all at once. And so I'm going to pick something here that seems interesting and has, something, a good amount of stuff to work with. What do I want? I'm rereading Dune, so that's why that's in there. Anticipation of the new movie. Let's look at, I don't want to get anything too technical. So let's look at there's a grapefruit article, which is pretty interesting. Here, article, grapefruit's one of the weirdest fruits on the planet. So this is what an article, when it comes right in from Readwise, looks like. There's a little work to be done here. So what I like to do is, for the author attribute, I like to have the website kind of, this is how Readwise does it, but what I'll do is I want to have the person in there as well. So I'll open a new link, I'll find who the writer is and add a link to their name. And so that way, what I can do is, Dan Nosowitz, I can, when I get a lot of articles from a single writer, and I can go to their page and what I can do with that is see all the articles I have from them, and you can find patterns there. You can, there's a lot you can do just by having a collection tied to that author. Recommended by, I got this from Nat Eliason. If someone recommends me an article or a book, I'll have that there, and there'll be a link to their name, so I'll remember that they recommended something to me in my personal CRM. And then if I see it, I can, or when I'm processing it, I can reach out to them and be like, hey, I really like this article that you sent me. Here are my thoughts on it. I think people like to, if they share something with you, they like to get feedback. So it's kind of a nice thing to do, and Rome enables it by doing something like this. Speaking of feedback, any feedback you all have, like I said earlier, this is my first ever live stream. So any feedback, I'm happy to hear it. I'm glad you're all here doing this with me. It's a lot of fun so far. I'm really enjoying it. I hope you all are too. So the next step, full title, straightforward. Status, again, this is one of the most important pieces of metadata that I use, because this is what determines where the article goes in the whole idea factory. So right now, this is in things to process, and we're waiting. And so once we process it, we'll take out the link to things to process. We'll change this to process. And then that will be it really for the article. But for these things, there'll be more to come. Tags. So usually add tags later, but because I remember, I'm not so far removed from when I actually originally read this article that I can throw in some tags. So I'm going to do biology, pharmaceuticals, pharmacology. Pharmacology is probably a better one. Food, and I'll drop the link to the article if you all want to take a look at it. For this template, do I always fill in each section? No, this is one of my favorite things about Rome is how fluid it is. So what I do is I fill in what I find necessary. So I won't always go and like fully do a full summary on an article. If I only get like 2 major points from it, it's not really worth summarizing. I may not get, excuse me, I may not get an idea from an article. I may not get inspiration. Like I probably won't get one from this article. This is more of a descriptive thing. So I will, excuse me. So I will probably not have any ideas in this article. Maybe I'll make one up so we can kind of go through that process. But yeah, I generally, it's very rare that I'll fill in all of these things. The metadata gets filled in automatically by Readwise, so that's just always going to be there. And so the next step is to fix the headlines. So all I do here is highlight the space and then hit spacebar, and then that will cause Rome to actually, oops, that will cause Rome to recognize or render the header. And so I'll open these up just so that I have these reminders available to me. Once I fill them out, I usually remove all of the extra notes. So the next step would be progressive summarization. So there's a bunch of highlights here. One thing I love about the Readwise export is it gives you a link directly back to that highlight in Instapaper. So in 1989, David Bailey, researcher in the field of clinical pharmacology, actually simplifying the biggest discovery of his career. Maybe I'll highlight this. I like to be very generous in my highlights. Well, we'll start with bold. And then we can do a note like, why is this a big discovery? And we'll be able to answer that soon. I'll help guide kind of the summarization. Food is grapefruit. The other thing too, I don't do a lot of tagging in the highlights. I kind of go back and forth on it. Again, the fluidity of Rome means it doesn't really matter. But I tend not to, just because it breaks kind of the highlighting and bolding scheme of progressive summarization. Instead, I'll save the tagging for transient notes, literature notes, and the evergreens that come from it. So this is, I thought this was really cool. You mix certain pomelos and mandarins, you get a sour orange. Cross it with citron, you get a lemon. It's like blending colors. I think this is really neat. So I'll do that. So I guess I'll summarize this article real quick. It's about how citrus in general works, and how, as an introduction to the weird effects that grapefruit has on the body, researchers found in the 80s that they were doing drug trials, and people who were ingesting grapefruit juice with the drug to mask there's an experiment where they had to mask the taste of the drug so they could double blind the experiment. They found only grapefruit juice could effectively mask the taste of it, but then their results were like completely wonky. Like people taking really small doses were reacting as if they took huge doses. And so this kind of describes the evolution of citrus fruits in general by humans, and also this discovery and how they discovered the actual enzyme in citrus fruit in general, but it's highly concentrated in grapefruit. That It's not an enzyme, actually. It's some other chemical. I can't remember the exact class, but I'm sure we'll find it in my notes. How it affects the metabolism of drugs in the body, of orally consumed drugs. And so, and then the consequences of that for research and for public health. So grapefruit is a mix between the pomelo and a sweet orange. So these kind of declarative things I like to highlight. So what I'll do is we'll do one pass where I bold stuff, and then another pass where I highlight things. So we'll go. I'll try to be pretty quick through this. Grapefruit's not from Asia. Grapefruit was found in Barbados. So it's the history of the grapefruit. That's interesting. Citrus naturally hybridizes. So a lot of the stuff can give us ideas, and I mean, I'm thinking about things in agriculture. I'm thinking about the biology of plants, the botany of it, the pharmacology, which is what I'm a little more interested in. I actually got into neuroscience because I was interested in psychopharmacology. So we didn't know, people didn't call it a grapefruit until the 1830s. We had this one. The history, I'm not as interested in, so I won't take too many highlights from there. This is kind of interesting because this guy sampled a fruit that tasted like unripe grapes, but a lot of people that actually lived in Barbados said they didn't have grapes, so they had sea grapes, which actually do taste like grapefruit. And it's kind of interesting, but so citrus is chaotic. Let's just grab this. Again, everyone has kind of different highlighting and summarization techniques. I'm very liberal with how I highlight. I'm kind of a pack rat in general, so this will probably look very different for you. I grew up in Florida, so having the industry moving further south is actually a big part of the history of Florida and its settlement. And so I find that really interesting. There are actually towns. There's a town in like the middle of nowhere, Florida, called Satsuma, after the orange variety that they used to grow there. And there are towns that are almost ghost towns nowadays because they're too far north in Florida. After there was a big freeze in the early 1900s that caused them to move even further south down towards like the Everglades. Citrus really drove a lot of Florida, a lot of the settlement there, a lot of the culture to this day. Orange Belt Railway. This could be a cool topic. Since I don't think I'm going to do further highlighting, I'm going to just go ahead and make that an item. I'll probably not do anything with this, but if I decide one day I want to talk about, or I want to think about kind of the history of the settlement of Florida pre-AC, which I think is interesting because I can barely survive there with air conditioning. This would be a good topic to work with. So this kind of requires a little forward thinking as well. Florida as we know it exists because of citrus. I'm going to highlight and bold this. So the second step of progressive summarization is to do the highlighting. This is, I think, is a pretty interesting thing that could turn into a research topic. So I think we might have an idea brewing. So actually, I do have an idea brewing. So let's go up here and go ahead and add this idea. The settlement of Florida pre-air conditioning. So this is an idea. So I want to have it pretty well capture kind of the direction I want to go with this topic. I'll have a much more pithy page title when we process it. Not processing, waiting. And so now this will show up in my writing inbox. So I want to show it yet. We'll take a look at that later. And then I'll go ahead and throw in these highlights just so that I have a note to self when I go to process it of some of the things that, of at least one link back to this whole topic that I can use as fodder for that research. Grapefruit's long been associated with health. I like this quote a lot. The grapefruit is one of the most destructive foes of modern medicine in the entire food world. I like it a lot, so I'm going to highlight and bold. I've been kind of leaning towards doing progressive summarization all in one shot rather than over time, because I read so much that it's not super common that I'll go back and do the next layers of summarization in a single article. There's just too much, and I won't make use of the article. So if I do it all in one shot, Then I get the inspirations and ideas holistically. I come up with the literature notes more quickly, and I get more use out of an article if I just do it all together. But it's definitely, to what Abe commented, it's definitely a very personal process. So you should adapt it to your needs and how you work best, and that will change over time. I mean, my process has changed a lot, even since the first day I wrote this diagram down. Um, so this is where the experiment starts. This David Bailey guy was working on a blood pressure drug, felodipine, uh, trying to see how alcohol affected the response. So he had to do a blinded study, like I talked about, um, and uh, so he had to disguise the taste of alcohol. So I want to bold that because that's kind of where grapefruit comes in. Um, I like science is, even from my short stint working in science, it's a lot more chaotic than people would lead you to believe. And so this is a really great example of that. Like, me and my wife Barbara decided to try, mix this drug with everything we had in our fridge to see what could mask the taste with alcohol. Uh, Actually, no, they in this case they weren't testing it with the drug; they're testing it with alcohol. And also, in my experience, citrus is the best mixer for alcohol. Um, I'm a big fruity cocktail guy. Um, so finally, we have a can of grapefruit juice. Why don't we try that? And you couldn't tell. So they gave the subjects cocktail alcohol and grapefruit juice. And the control group got just grapefruit juice. Both groups got the drug, obviously, or maybe not obvious. So that's why I wanted to make sure I mentioned it. The grapefruit juice is just there for blinding the alcohol administration. Um, the amount of the drug was much higher in the blood in their bloodstreams than they would expect. And so I'm also going to highlight this part because this is really the key passage. The one downside is that highlighting and bolding don't really play nice together, so you have to do this kind of escaping. And not really not technically escaping, but you have to close out the bold, start the highlight, then start the bold again. I think, no, I always have to play with this a little bit, so I always forget the precise order in which it works. I think this should do it. Yep, there we go. The levels were 4 times higher than they would have expected. And so this is where he self-administered this drug, this cocktail. He found 5 times as much. And then again, phrasing that kind of jumps out to you is always good to get to that next level of summarization. No problem, Radula. This will be posted to YouTube once we finish up. This is all recording, I hope. So this will be available to go back and look at later. So this is an important part here. The human body's mechanism of breakdown stuff ends up in the stomach. So cytochrome P450 is a group of enzymes that do this, that inactivate. So highlight that. And then this cytochrome will, it could become a research topic or something else, or just a page. Grapefruit has furanocoumarins, which help fungal infections. We want to keep that because this is getting to the mechanics, which is what I'm interested in primarily. This is kind of the key finding. The furanocoumarins, they basically are suicidal inhibitors of cytochrome P450. So they attach to it and nothing else happens. So the enzyme eventually will break down and your body will create new ones. But for a while, I don't know what the time scale is, but you won't be able to metabolize drugs the same way. So this is kind of a consequence of it. If you have a drug bioavailability, prescribe 10 times the amount of the drug you need because so little will make it into the bloodstream. But because grapefruit uh, reduces the P450 enzymes, you're getting a lot more of that drug and you could overdose. This is extremely important. And in America, we don't actually warn people about this, which is kind of stunning. And the Food and Drug Administration does not place warnings. I think I did that backwards. Yeah. So if you're going to do a whole passage, you want to highlight and then bold. And that will do that. The FDA just says talk to your doctor. Great. I think in Canada, they actually label drugs that have this interaction. And it works for all bitter citrus. And this is, I suspect, I don't know if any of you have experience with psychedelics, but one of the long-term, it's always considered an urban myth of consuming psychedelics with orange juice to make the trip more intense. People think there's something, it has something to do with vitamin C, which isn't the case. Vitamin C has nothing to do with the ingestion of the classical psychedelics. But it's possible that there are furanocoumarins in orange juice that could cause more of the active components to reach your bloodstream and eventually your brain. This is kind of interesting. Probably won't do anything with it, so I'll just bold it. Citrus growers have been working for more than a decade on a variety that doesn't interfere with those drugs. Okay, so we've done the highlighting and progressive summarization, first steps of progressive summarization. Now we'll do some literature notes. So these are like kind of rough outlines. These can be these can be very tightly coupled to the source. So this will kind of be like a rough outline. Grapefruit and most citrus are a result of high levels of hybridization. And so I'll what I do for literature notes and transient notes, I'll add block references to everything that is relevant so that there's kind of a chain of custody. Citrus naturally hybridizes. Let's say affinity for. So anything you can hybridize things a lot if you want, but this kind of happens naturally. Like this. And I'll usually do a little bit of linking in the literature notes. But these are mostly fodder for the transient notes, so I don't go too crazy with it. And then we'll find, so what the bolding and everything does is just help us scan really quickly for these kind of pertinent points that we found. So citrus groves, or the atmosphere in citrus groves drove the growth of Florida. And so now this one will cover kind of the pharmacological effects. Grapefruit and bitter citrus in general. Suicidal inhibitors of Thanks for checking that out, Ave. Melissa, yeah, this process is pretty much the same for tweets and Twitter threads. So they come in through Readwise just the same. I'll do progressive summarization. Maybe I'll manually pull in diagrams because they don't show up as easily with the Readwise export from Rome. But yeah, this same exact process happens. It's usually more abbreviated than this because this is a very long article with a lot of dense information, whereas tweet threads are usually like nicely summarized thoughts already. So a lot of times the summarization, I'll highlight almost the whole thread and then put it into my own words. I'll just do like the summary, maybe grab some transient notes or ideas out of it. But there aren't as many like literature notes, and the process is the same. It's just less dense, I guess, is the way to describe it. Um, but yeah, this is probably like the most dense kind of article I would work with. Um, this so I just actually want to take all of this, copy block refs. This is a nice. I think this is a newer feature. You can copy multiple block refs, and so now I have everything that goes there. So this I kind of took literally this idea of I write outline notes. Um, Abe, yeah, I mean, if you're interested in that, we could definitely look into something like that. I haven't done anything like that before, but I would love to do something one on one. Yeah, feel free to reach out. My DMs should be open on Twitter. That would be probably the best way. If not, if you go to my website kylestratus.com, I'll there's a contact form that will go to my email, and we can coordinate that way as well. Um, do I use the right sidebar? I actually do use it quite a bit. Right now, it's not as necessary because I'm just kind of jumping around on this article. But when I am like working on a project, usually I'll have like some resources open in the sidebar. But yeah, I do make use of it quite a bit. Um, oh, I'm glad to see so many Bostonians here. I've been here about 3 years now, and I'm originally from Worcester, out west, and then also I grew up in Florida, so all over the place. Um, so, all right, cool. So we've got some literature notes. Again, these are kind of like a rough outline of the main concepts. So I'll delete all of this just because it's unnecessary clutter at this point. Now we'll try to make some transient notes with the idea of these building into Evergreen. So let's see. I want to think about the settlement of Florida. So citrus, and again, these aren't as so the because these are broader, more conceptual. There's not going to be as much. It's not going to be as tied to this particular article. They're going to be very generic statements that I can expand upon when I get more information. So this transient note will get more if as I do more reading and research on this. This one will be for the settlement in Florida before air conditioning. Uh, it's not going to be fully supported by this article, but we'll have the beginnings of support. And so what I'll do is as I continue to do more research, I'll be able to add support to the transient note. Eventually, as I mold it, I can process that into an evergreen note along with other transient notes that may um, relate to it into a nice like paragraph long evergreen note. Um, and so we'll add weighting. And I'll go settlement. Maybe more accurately say the Western settlement because they're obviously lot of native groups that pre-existed there that have extremely interesting history, especially the Seminole tribe. And what I like to do with transient notes is I like to have just the literature notes tied to them. When do I do the transient notes? So yeah, I kind of go through this whole process ideally all at once. The transient notes, when I fully process them, they're going to show up in my writing inbox. So we're going to hop over there in a few minutes, and that will be where I actually do the processing of them, try to identify clusters, and figure out what I can make into an evergreen note. So I try to set aside about an hour, 4 to 5 times a week to go through my writing inbox, look at my transient notes, identify clusters, and try to build them out into evergreen notes. So yeah, that's a process that takes some time and a lot of reading. Ideally, I like to have multiple sources and transient notes to feed into one evergreen note. So it's a very reductive process. So here I'll have this, and then what I can do when I'm processing the transient note, if I want to look at this is where the sidebar will come into play. I'll just open up the block ref in the sidebar, and I can look at these, the actual highlights that inspired it. And then I want to also have something on Furinocoumarins. See if I can find the spelling. Furinocoumarins. Present in bitter citrus, including. And so what I'll do is, I go back and forth on densely linking. Yeah, the transient notes, I like to have a ton of sources to back them up. Otherwise, if it's just one source, to me, that's not worthless, but it's less of a strong proposition. And for the evergreen nodes, I want there to be a very strong, forceful statement that summarizes it. And to do that, I want to have confirmation from multiple sources. And if there's conflict between evergreen notes or something like that, which will come up, you can link them together within the notes and make note of that. That way, if you're writing about it or you're doing a project, you can take note of that conflict and where that may arise and what could solve that conflict. So what I go back and forth on linking these transient notes, but I think it's useful to do so because a lot of these will go into research. So I can look at these kind of topic pages and find these transient notes before they're even processed into evergreens, just in case I make use of them before I can create an evergreen. It'll also help when they show up in the hub page. It'll help a lot with guiding my own research and finding more sources. Inactivate cytochrome P50. Should double check, make sure it is, yeah, P450. Which processes. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to add some more topic links to these transient notes. So looking back at the citrus grove, the Western Southern Florida for air conditioning, kind of came up with a research topic page title that I like. And so I'm going to go early settlement of Florida, and I'll also do that here. And so when I go to process the idea itself, I can put that into the research page. So that's there. This will be associated with it. This one, pharmacology. I like to have these categories here just to kind of, again, for especially when I know I'm going to use this for like a research topic or multiple topics, the links will be there already. Pharmacology. I think that's okay for that. So do weighting. I'm going to also do bitter citrus. So one of the things I do, because there's case sensitivity in page titles, is I try to keep everything title case when I make pages. Okay, so I'm going to stick with those for now for the transient notes. We have an idea. So quick summary is many widely different varieties of citrus arise from their affinity for hybridization. The bitter citrus produce phenocoumarins that, and we could link in the summary. We could make page links as well. All right, see you later, Rum Hacker. Yeah, so this can be densely linked, personal decision, if you want to, so that you can go back and really quickly access your executive summaries. I haven't really made a strong decision on whether I like to do that or not yet. Abe, I can answer this right now. Most of my days is coding because that's my day job. So at least 8 to 10 hours, more accurately, probably between 6 and 10 hours a day daily. Using NLP models, I have. So Rome Nerd, when that started, I talked to Igor a lot, and I was planning on using something like that, similar like named entity recognition tool, probably with Spacey, to help very quickly ingest articles for building knowledge packs. So that's something I'm going to be writing about and building out when I have time. My free time is kind of split between like family time, relaxation, reading, knowledge output like this, and like screwing around on social media. So I need to focus a little more time on coding. I think I'll be prioritizing more coding projects coming up once my current things get taken care of. I also write for Real Python, so there's a coding element to that. When I write an article, I actually we just published one on sentiment analysis with Spacey. And yeah, we could definitely get together on working on a project like that together. Be very happy to. But I also build like these one-off projects that are for like demos and teaching for Real Python when I write for them. So there's a good bit of coding that happens there, but it's like, toy projects for teaching a concept. So the most recent thing was like I made a movie review sentiment analysis engine with Spacey. So yeah, I think that can be useful, but there's also for personal use. I think there's something to be said for manually doing this. It really helps drive those insights and model how you think. So that's like super important. So there should be a balance, but if you're like building out knowledge packs for other people to use in their databases, which is something I've been toying with for the past like 3 months, something like that will help rapidly build them. I think can be very useful in that sense. Which is that inhibit the metabolism of drugs and co-administration can drastically increase the bioavailability of said drugs. I'm not going to fill all these out. I want to make sure we're hopping to kind of the other parts of this, because this is really the longest piece of it. So I'll do this cleanup. And now we're done. We've done progressive summarization, 4 levels. We've gotten some inspirations, some transient notes, and literature notes. And yeah, so next we'll go and look at the writing inbox. Yeah, I hope to. I'll be updating the public database at some point today. I'm actually gonna record right after this. I have to record the Real Python podcast. I'll be a guest on there today. I'm not sure when that will come out, but some point tonight, every Saturday, I make a note to update my public database with new evergreens and book notes if I've finished something. I'm actually trying to rapidly get through the pragmatic programmer so I can put those notes on the public database. All right, so the writing inbox. This is this is fully packed. So this is what one really looks like. So research topics, I love having this because everything's at a glance. I can fully just like edit things. So the research, I'm going to add my research topic right now that I got from the idea. So we'll go from bottom up. You see, I have a lot of ideas and transient notes to process. But here's my idea query, and this is everything that pulls into an article idea. This will get grouped into article idea, raindrop.io review, article on task management in Rome. And this is from my daily journals, reviews. Rome really opened up the floodgates of ideas for me. So when I first moved up here in 2018 from Florida, it was a really big jump. My job responsibilities went way up. It was my first senior engineer position. I was working at a really fast-paced, chaotic startup. That was a lot of fun. And because of that stress and kind of the acclimation, the flow of my ideas just stopped. I had no extra ideas of other things I wanted to do or build or anything like that. All right, see you later, Rabbi. I had no idea what to do. So that lasted for 2.5 years until I started using Rome. And now, as you can see, the ideas have been that it's like a dam broke, and it's what I love about Rome. So we have the idea here, this research topic idea, early settlement of Florida. So I'm going to copy this. We're going to mark this as processed. We're going to keep the early settlement of Florida link there, but we're going to also add it up here to the research page under waiting because we haven't started it yet. And so now that it's here, let's open it up in the sidebar, and we can see that we have this link to actually open this, and we can see we have this processed idea. We have the transient note, so we already have kind of the beginning of a research hub article, and this is what it looks like if you go straight to it. And so that's you have it already. You have all that information right there just from that whole processing stage. So we processed an idea from that article. And another thing I want to show before we process the transient notes is an article. So we're going to process this raindrop.io article. It's super easy. It's going to take 2 seconds. So I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this block ref just so I don't forget about it. Let's do article namespace, raindrop.io review, make a new page. I use Alfred for my templating. I know on Rome 42, Rome Hacker introduced this concept of smart blocks in the beta. I haven't gotten to set it up yet, but I will be playing with that soon, I promise. But for now, I use this, and this is not the one. I used the wrong one. So it's a writing project. So here we go. So this is all my metadata for writing an article. This Trello card is I don't really use Trello anymore because of the article ideas inbox. You can see I pre-fill out the status with weighting and article ideas. Um, what I will do is I will drop this block reference just in here so that it's linked to this. It doesn't really matter as much for this because this is just like a note to like, hey, do this. But if you have other notes underneath it, it's useful to bring that in. Actually, this should go under resources. And yeah, so all this stuff will get filled out as I'm writing. I won't go into the whole writing process, but this is just to go show what my template looks like. And then if we hop over to article ideas, it's now we now see it in the Kanban board. This is that automation that as soon as you create that status line, because we're using these queries, your Kanban board gets updated automatically. So that's kind of the power of of using queries with your Kanban boards. So now that we'll hop back to the writing inbox, we've processed another idea. So we'll change the status to processed, and it's no longer there. So that's out of our inbox. Now we have some transient notes. I'm using the privacy feature for Rome 42 to kind of block out some of my work stuff. Um, so there's any like real like proprietary data in there, but I mentioned people that I work with, so I don't want to put them on blast on public. um, so let's find. Okay, here are our transient notes um, for this article. Because I don't have a big cluster, I'm not going to make a full evergreen note. And I'm still trying to get better at the process of creating evergreens. Um, so let's see if we can find any clusters. We have a lot of these transient notes are better as article ideas. This is from a project I worked on for work about just some learning things I discovered with the tooling that I use. I use a lot of AWS and Python and serverless stuff. Um, let's see if I. So I don't. I'm not seeing any big clusters yet, um, but actually I do. So um, that's a little technical though. Um, so I think what we should do instead is let's pretend like we're going to make an evergreen note with just one transient note. It's not a huge deal. We can that way just kind of get a look at what at least my flow is. Normally I do this with the cluster, but we're gonna create a transient node because this is very close to being an evergreen. Um, so I'm gonna do. I'll make a pretty nicely summarized title. I hope. So let's say bitter citrus contains chemicals that inhibit the metabolism of drugs. So that's this idea of an evergreen note, like an API. Um, I try to use that kind of programming knowledge or background that I have to conceptualize this. My evergreen note template is super simple. I have the tags, I have references. Um, what I like to do is there's no children directly here, which is probably okay. Um, the original, where are the children? Let's see. Oh, I forgot to add. Let's do that now. Uh, I also forgot to add this literature note to this transient note, so I'll do that now. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll apply children as references. I don't know if there are more references directly, then I would continue down the whole process. That way we have that chain of custody all the way down to the individual highlights that inform this evergreen note. Close all this. So what I like to do here, I'll add some tags, so pharmacology, botany. Yeah, let's keep it at that because the node itself is going to be really densely linked. So what I'll do is let's bitter citrus. I'm going to tag like every sort of that I can. That's like really the key to having effective evergreen notes, I think. Bitter citrus fruit, such as grapefruit, contain, let's say, high levels. We can probably further refine that later. Chemicals called furanocoumarins that inhibit cytochrome P450. And eventually this could probably get spun out to its own evergreen note because it's its own concept. Is a family of enzymes that metabolize drugs and other chemicals in the stomach and liver. And this will probably get refined. I think it's in the stomach and liver. It may be present in other places as well. But for the sake of not spending all day on this, excuse me, I'll keep it to that. By inhibiting these enzymes, co-administering drugs with, for example, grapefruit juice can cause potentially dangerously high levels of the drug in the bloodstream, which is, and then I'll just throw in a mention of bioavailability here. And that's like our first draft evergreen. Evergreens, even though they are evergreen, they will, these are things that you should always be building on as you learn more. So when I go and look at bitter citrus, for example, or if I want to think about bioavailability, and this becomes like a research page, I'll always have this here. And if I learn more about, say, bioavailability or cytochrome P450, then, which is really P450s, and this is a capital P. So I'll go ahead and change that, and that changes all the mentions, which is another great thing about Rome. And I'll have this topic. I have all these notes already associated with it, and I have a head start, which is one of my favorite things about Rome and taking evergreen notes. But that dense linking, where I link all these concepts, and I may add more in the future as I groom this evergreen note. It will that allows me to make sure that this concept is linked to everything that's related to. So if I look up one thing, I have that information there. I don't lose that, which was a big problem of pretty much every note-taking tool I've used in the past, including Notion, bullet journaling, Evernote, markdown files. Linking them together was always a big problem. So let's go back to the writing inbox. We've now processed this. So let's change weighting to processed. and it's out of that page. It's out of this query. So now we know that we've processed this transient note, and it's still linked to the article itself and to the Evergreen note. So if we want to resurface it, it's available, it's searchable, we'll be able to find it. But I've found so far, at least it's rare for me to try to resurface the Evergreen note or the transient notes by themselves without either the Evergreen note or the article that they came from, or one of the articles that they reference. And the transient note's already linked in the references section of the Evergreen note. So yeah, that's what processing the writing inbox looks like. I'll spend time doing that all the time. I think the most time consuming part of processing the writing inbox is actually creating the Evergreen notes, and also just trying to collect enough to create a good Evergreen. And like I said, this is your research topics at a glance. So when I go do a research, when I want to do research, or if I come up with a new idea, doing it through the writing inbox is really helpful. But when I go through the actual research phase, I'll just open up the actual research page, and I'll pick an article or a topic out of here. And so let's look at one that's in progress, just so you can see what one looks like. So loneliness epidemic. This was something that I used as part of the YouTube video that I'll be releasing soon. I'm still editing it, but you can see I have some research questions here, but mostly I have articles and transient notes. So this idea of I have this article, loneliness epidemic, psychology is a major part of it. This idea of connection deficit, which is a concept that I pulled out of another article. This social media, this is an Evergreen note that I did a while ago, and this is tied, as you can see, to the loneliness epidemic concept. And I use Evergreen notes to aid in the building of transient notes too. So there's this like Ouroboros of Evergreen notes feeding into transient notes, feeding into Evergreen notes, and this kind of this infinite circle. So this is a transient note that has been processed. It's part of this unbundling topic. So I can connect this loneliness epidemic idea to unbundling because it's in that transient note. And this idea of unbundling communities like Facebook and Reddit into smaller, more focused communities has an Evergreen note associated with it, some transient notes, a tool. So tilde.town is this really cool SSH-based social network. It's like an old school BBS. So that's connected to this article about Google's empire being unbundled. So this is like a really rich topic that I have that I could go and research. I could write an article on it right now because I have so much here to work with. So as you build up these transient notes and Evergreen notes and highlights, and you're linking everything, you get this really rich ecosystem of ideas. And the writing inbox, the research page, the project page, article ideas page, they help unify that, keep it all in one place so that you can really quickly access them at a glance. And when you take that time to do research or to write, you can look at all the topics back. I want to work on this one today. I have enough here to write something or to produce something, and you're already halfway done. It's really, really great. Definitely a productivity game changer. And so I know I'm hopping around a lot, but that's the fun of Rome. So I have this unbundling concept, but I have this Evergreen note that is related to it. So the title, Small Focus Unbundled, Interest-Based Communities Can Aid in Fighting Loneliness. Interest-based communities is another like topic that I have elsewhere. And so same with Unbundled. So this helps search. So if I want to look for communities, this will come up. And then here's the Evergreen note. Social media topic page is unbundling, another topic because of the increased noise and lack of deeper social connection. I also call out the connection deficit idea, which comes from a research Psychology Today article between users as these networks unbundle. Interest-based communities. This isn't a link. This is because I wanted to preserve this is an alias. I just want to preserve the casing here. I don't want it to be capitalized. may take their place and fulfill the need for a deeper but still virtual connection between people. And this right here can be like, this reading this gives me an idea. Oh, if I had the time and the energy, I could, build a very small niche community, and that there's a business idea or a project idea right there. That serendipity that Roam drives as you build out your database is like second to none. I think is the most powerful part of it, aside from the great community that we're all a part of. And then this links back as a reference. I have another Evergreen note that's explicitly tied to it. And so I can hop to this Evergreen note, and this kind of builds on it more. So if I wanted to write an article about this, I have a few paragraphs already written, basically. There is, for all the intentionality that comes with Roam, a lot of unintentionality comes from it. That serendipitous building of communities. I think it's really cool, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. It's a lot of fun, and I'm glad that you're all getting some value from this. But yeah, this is pretty much the system. To recap, yeah, we'll look through some more of these because it's fun to kind of roam through these. Just as a quick recap, we looked at things to process. We picked an article and processed it. And by processing it, we did progressive summarization. We got some literature notes. We built those into transient notes. We even got some inspiration, some ideas. All those got fed into automatically, thanks to queries, got fed into our writing inbox. So we got our ideas in here, the ideas that we want to process into something. We processed 2 of those. We got we had a bunch of transient notes that we built. We took one and built it into an Evergreen note. And then we created a research topic and began that process of calling out that research topic. And we have some notes already to get started with that to help drive that research. We also, we didn't come up with a new project, which is fine. We don't always have to do that. But this is what the filled out projects page looks like. I think I glossed over that. So this is really the same concept as the article ideas. I just have 3 statuses: waiting, in progress, and done. And again, they rely on that status query. So they look for a personal project that's in progress on the status block and status metadata. And you see, like, any sort of project I want to do is here. Build a project management course. I want to create a video on an information operating system, which that's the video I've been referencing throughout this stream. And actually, let's go and take a look at it. Again, I know I'm like jumping around a lot, but this is kind of what's important to understand about Roam, is that it's this flat, not really flat, but non-hierarchical structure that enables you to jump around between ideas that are related and form those connections, strengthen those connections, and be inspired by those connections that you wouldn't necessarily get in a more hierarchical, structured tool. So this is what the project looks like. There's some goals. Achieve fat fire, which I'm very, very far off of, which is financial independence, retire early. I'm not really into retiring early, but financial independence would be cool, so I can just work on things that I'm interested in. And I usually have a due date, completed date. I have this type metadata that I don't use so much, but it's there for when queries go beyond just single blocks. I'm not trying to avoid the pun. I love that pun of Roam. In my head, when I say roaming through, I'm thinking Roam, capital R. So this project has some tags so that I can, if I have like if I have these hub pages like YouTube, I can see the projects I did that were related to YouTube. This overview, lessons learned. So lessons learned I use in all my projects. This is a really powerful way of collecting transient notes from a project. A project, you should build something and create, and that's great. But there's always a learning experience from a project. And I learn even more from building stuff than I do from reading anything. And so I use this lessons learned header to um, keep track of all that. Usually, so this one I put under the YouTube video production um, page link, so that shows up on that research hub page. I'll also full on write like a transient note and tag it transient and waiting, so it shows up in my writing inbox and I can do something with it. Um, those also tend to turn into ideas. So I'll learn something about say AWS that I'm doing, and I'll have a transient note or an idea there that will kind of form the core of a short article. And then that article can get built out into something else if it gets interest in traffic. So if I build out an article, a lot of people are interested in it, like with the information operating system, I got a lot of interest in that. So that's inspired me to create the video, my first ever video. Um, and that the length of that inspired me to do a live stream instead of an article for the Idea Factory. Um, so this whole lessons learned thing is kind of a collector of ideas, inspirations, transient notes from building a project, and that just by doing something like transient and waiting, this is now in the writing inbox, and I can do something with it. So yeah, this has my resources, my project plan. Um, how I want to build it out, a checkbox. So I usually plan out the article how I want to build it, and that guides my work because I usually have an idea of how I'm going to do the flow of a project. I'll forget it instantly if I don't put it down, so I'll create that checklist right away. The project plan is really important. Questions are questions that come up in the course of building this project that stump me, that I can ask someone or that can research, and I can provide they can provide transient notes, I can provide research topics, or that may be something I want to answer with the project. And so keeping track of that there is really important. I use this journal header to track my day-to-day progress and what I did each day. So with the journal, I'll do today, and I'll just say like I edited the video with iMovie and it sucked. Whatever. I'll put something there, and that's just kind of a running log of things I do. I float newer. I do a descending date, so I'll put the newer dates at top so they're more easy to access. But that's what a project looks like, and then once it's done, I'll change the status to done, and then the project page, it will move over to done. So these are like some learning things I've done. You can see the done status. And that's really the power of combining Kanban and queries. And yeah, I think so. We now looked at a project very briefly. We did we looked at the research hub, and then we looked at the individual hub pages and how that feeds into creating new transient notes, finding new articles to draw from, and creating that virtuous cycle of further research, more interesting things, and making some kind of output from your knowledge. Article ideas we actually created an article, the beginning of an article with this raindrop.io review. So now it's in here when I want to, when I'm working on my weekly plan. I'm not going to get too deep into the weekly plan. I have this template on my GitHub because it uses a lot of date math, but I have these daily goals. And this page is to reference. I'll go through all my to-dos, my goals, projects, article ideas, and research, pull them into my daily goals, and make a checklist of what I want to do for each day. And that will kind of guide, the article ideas I pursue. So I can open this up in the sidebar and pick out, okay, I want to work on the article, the raindrop.io review. I'll put it on under here, like that. And then when I get started, once I plan out the outline, what I'll do is I'll actually pull in the individual pieces of the outline as block refs into my weekly plan. But maybe I'll do another stream at some point if there's interest on how I kind of plan out my week and my day, because this feeds into a lot of this kind of goes into the task management aspect of this whole information factory. Because once you have this factory going, you've got to actually do stuff with it, and that the task management, that's where task management really shines, and it's a system that works really well together. So I'll keep that for another stream. If there are any other questions, feel free to ask them now. I think we've gone through everything, but there's something that I missed or isn't clear, definitely ask me. You can ask me now. You can leave a comment on once this gets added to YouTube. Please like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. You know, the typical thing you hear from YouTubers. I'm learning how to do this. So I would definitely appreciate it if, you know, any feedback is really helpful, and I would really, really enjoy it to hear what you guys thought about this. But I think this is it. Thanks everyone for joining and for interacting. I really had a blast doing this. I was super nervous starting out, but this was a lot of fun, and I hope that I can do this some more in the future. Maybe I'll do a task management one in a few weeks. So have a great rest of your weekends. I'll talk to you all on Slack, Twitter, reach out however you'd like. I'm always happy to talk. See you all soon.